listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hi, Jackye.
Hello. How are you doing, Katee?
I'm super good. You're all like pretty in pink today.
Right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm working on it.
Are you trying to pretend it's springtime? Is that what you're going for?
Fully. It is raining and I'm pretending it's spring.
It is. So we had a frost warning here in Arizona for like the last 3 days. It is so freaking cold. And, for most folks that are listening to this, they're going to laugh at me. But we had, like I said, a frost warning overnight. It's like 50 degrees right now. And I'm sitting in my office with like 16 layers on, just freezing. But anyhow, welcome to the Inclusive AF podcast.
Yes, welcome. I will say it's been very interesting. I did a little travel last week.
Yes.
Went to San Francisco and I found If Heaven Exists. I think this was my version.
Okay.
We were in an office building and they said that they had snacks. However, they had like lime flaming hot Cheetos. Like they had the Stroop waffles. These are not normal snacks to have.
No.
When people say snacks, I think microwave popcorn and Coke. No, they had everything. And so if
clearly you were at a tech company.
Right. Yes.
In Silicon Valley. Yes.
That's right. I was also reminded that I don't look stable in places with hills. And someone asked me if I was okay. And I was like, I thought I was just standing as I realized I was like rocking back and forth. San Francisco is way more hilly than Texas. And only in Seattle and San Francisco did people ask me if I was about to pass out. And I'm like, what are you talking? Oh, no, I'm just not used to standing on hills.
Yeah. Well, it's also the walking up and down hills. I mean, we get that if we want to go hiking in Arizona, but really not a thing in Waco, even a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Like there's not even an incline on the streets. Yeah. Like it's just flat Texas.
That's
all
right.
So let's get to our guest. We're sitting here just kibitzing.
Well, I guess I have a great segue and I don't look my best, but our next guest will help you look your best ever.
Better than we look today.
So why don't we kick it over to you and allow you to introduce yourself to our guests?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's such a joy already having this conversation with you. Thank you for setting the stage. My name is Dasha Dare. I'm a New York City-based photographer, portrait photographer, and a life coach. So my main focus and area of interest right now is the topic of self-image, the role images play in our life. Why do they cause separation in groups of people, in society generally? Another big topic for me is the need for feeling seen. Why do we want to feel seen? How do we make others feel seen? And helping others do that, right? So I most recently have been experimenting with adding photography to my life coaching sessions. So that's been kind of my brand new baby, in a sense that it's the project that takes most of my time right now, developing and working on and practicing. And the reason why I wanted to come to your podcast specifically, and how all of my work relates to inclusivity really, is the corporate offering that I've came up with. It's called Feeling Seen. It's a employee recognition offering as an alternative to traditional recognition methods. It's essentially a photo shoot where we talk with people about who they are as human beings, as opposed to how they are at work. Right? So that's kind of in short.
Yes. Awesome. Ever. I mean, I heard a story once about giving someone recognition and they were giving him awards and he was really introverted, really shy, but he was like top in sales and they were just bringing him on stage and he felt really uncomfortable. And then they gave him a family portrait. Like they took his family and took pictures of them. And he realized that, you know, like they realized that was what the most important thing to this person was his family and children. And so that meant a lot to them. But I love the thought of going through, asking questions and taking pictures, because in looking at some of the photography that you've done online and looking at Instagram, what struck me was how like these are normal, you know, air quote, normal people, everyday people.
Yeah.
But the pictures look like they're so interesting. Like they look like art pieces. Like I have so many questions, but I feel like people are exposing themselves, but yet look so comfortable. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, thank you, first of all. Thank you. I feel like it's been a hike to get to the point of, just like in any, I think, artistic or creative work, you work towards your product being so aligned and in synchronicity what your message is. So I feel like I'm at the point of doing photography for the last probably 15 years. I am there finally, since you were telling me about that. I think one side of the situation is that I have an intention to see a person as they are, because there are different photographers, right? Some photographers want to come up with an idea, stage the whole image, tell a person how to look, how to pose, what to do. I was always curious, why do people don't want to be themselves? You know, the most common requests when a person comes to a photographer, can you make my nose look smaller? Can you remove few inches from my waist? Can you make me look younger? Can you? And there was some point, at some point I asked myself, like, what is going on? Why do we not want to be ourselves? You know? And so I guess from that moment forward, I decided, okay, I really want to help people do something about this and help people feel more comfortable in their skin and see themselves from the other angle. And so from that moment forward, kind of my entire body of work is all about that. Like, I want to see you, and I want you to feel comfortable with me, comfortable enough to be seen. And I think that's how the whole idea of Feeling Seen project was evolving over time. And I'll tell you, I think only now, only after pandemic, I can see how much people are more open to being seen, to feeling seen, to being themselves, to living their life. And I think now is a great time to bring this into corporate world as well. Because as we're coming out from well, for some people, dark pandemic times, you know, we have an opportunity to look at each other with a fresh set of eyes. Mm-hmm. So how do we want to be seen? Do we want to be seen? How do we help people be more relaxed in their own body, in their own selves, without any sense of judgment? Because our self-image is based on our past experiences. So as long as we're attaching ourselves to our past negative experiences, especially if we talk about inclusivity and feeling being minor in certain situations, feeling disrespected maybe, as long as you live in the past, your self-image will remain the same. So how do we create new experiences for people to feel different? And so again, as you can see, I'm a big fan of this work, of this idea, and of blending photography in, because photography is every photo shoot is a very vulnerable space to be in. And so you have to be really careful navigating it without hurting, without a person feeling uncomfortable. And especially if I'm coming to a corporate environment, which is a workplace where we all have our masks, regardless of how much we're saying and talking about work-life integration and how the role of workplace have changed, well, we still feel like we're coming into the office playing a certain role, doing a certain job, doing certain things. So we assign certain meaning to this kind of setting. So it's interesting and it's tricky at the same time. And having that conversation during the photo shoot is a key. Me being a life coach, trained life coach, and accredited as an ICF coach, helps tremendously, knowing which questions to ask and which not to ask, and how not to hurt, and how not to make the situation worse or more uncomfortable for a person having a camera pointing in their face.
Yeah, Katee and I should not be photographers.
No, yeah. Well, I was like, I love the way that you're talking about this, because I think, every time I've gotten headshots done and talking to photographers and just folks that I know, there is that, getting people comfortable in front of the camera, that is the actual piece of work. Like, you can take beautiful shots, but until they are actually comfortable and kind of relaxed a little bit, it does make it extremely difficult for you as a photographer. So I think bringing that together and having those conversations and asking the questions to get people to a place that it's okay, and showing their authentic self, showing their real self is good. Like, that's just, I think that's such a gift in and of itself to be able to get people to that place. So,
but, you're absolutely right. But also, as you were speaking, I realized, well, how is it different from any interaction that we're having in day to day? What is stopping us from being that person without a camera in your hands, but being that person intentionally, or having an intention to make another person feeling relaxed and be themselves, as opposed to creating this intimidating setting or power play? Who is better? Who is worse? This is my cat, by the way. She's gonna hang out with us. She's a spirit animal, so she shows up when the truth is spoken.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So yes, for a photographer to be a successful photographer, you need to have this gift or ability or skill, whichever way you look at it. But then also for human to be human, I feel like we oftentimes forget that there is a way of being for us that makes another human feel something. So the question oftentimes is not about who is it in front of me. It's more about how I am being in this moment, and how does that make that person feel. So it's more of a, like, I take responsibility for how I show up. And I know that affects another person.
And I think that, like, I love the way that you're relating that, like, even if you didn't have the camera, how are you making someone feel when you're interacting with them? How are you approaching whatever the conversation, the interaction is? And I think that's just such a good reminder for all of us. And, this time of year, I'm always, very interested in how folks are feeling mentally, because it is like, if you're in the Northeast, or even, the Midwest, the weather, and the after December, the holidays, it's that January, February slug where it's freezing and you're miserable and you're like, I want sunshine, I want warmth, all those things. And, and so it is interesting, like, this is such a critical time for folks to show up and welcome them and, make them feel comfortable. But it takes work. It does take work. And, like, as you're saying, it's how you are showing up.
Yeah. I also, I've been observing the corporate world over the last couple of years, as how we were navigating this whole trajectory of working from home and then coming back to the offices, and work-life integration, and then work-life integration becoming work-life balance, and from balance to work-life harmony. And now, so what's next? How else are we gonna, help each other integrate?
So, I mean, it's true. For me, I have a SAD, which is seasonal associative disorder. And in the winter, what's funny is that I'm always like, I mean, I feel sad. It's cliche to say I have sad and I feel sad. It just sounds dumb, but I feel sad. And then the sun comes up and I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like, I don't know.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. And then it rains again. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to stay inside. They're like, what is going on? But I feel like there is changing seasons within people's life as we get older. And also on how other people see us affects how we see ourselves sometimes. I had mentioned that I was in San Francisco last week, and Katie knows I love singing karaoke. So I had no voice. So everybody knew I was singing karaoke. And my husband / executive producer husband, Todd, said, "How was it?" I was like, "Well, it's the same as always, except I'm the adult in the room." And that's different. And there is a moment when it's like, how does that change? Like, I'm doing the same activities, but it's different. People look at it different or look at each other different. But I want to get back to something you said earlier about making people feel comfortable, having that life coach piece, but being able to ask the right questions and the ones to avoid. I don't want you to spill all the beans in the lobby, but curious as to what types of questions can help our listeners, even if they're just trying to get to know somebody new, what types of things seem to work to help people feel comfortable or to know that you have an interest at least.
Hey podcast listeners, my name is Paul O'Connor and I'm the host of the Rust Belt Rundown, a show that highlights valuable insights from manufacturing executives and business leaders in Northeast Ohio and beyond. We convene these leaders for candid discussions about business, regional happenings, industry trends, entrepreneurship, and more. With a wide range of guests and topics, there is something for everyone. Listen to Rust Belt Rundown for free on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app.
Yeah, I think I would say generally we start not from asking the question, but from listening. And in coaching sessions. And I generally apply this to all of my communication and instances where I have social interactions. Being present in the moment, you instantly feel when another person is plugged into this conversation, into this environment. Like you and I are having a conversation right now. I, first of all, know that nothing else matters, except for my cat, of course, who sits in my lap. And I know that you're not being distracted by any other thoughts that, any other events that are happening in their life. Everyone has lives of their own, obviously. But then there is that kind of moment of mutual interest and also, again, intention. I keep on repeating this word because it's so important, because you and I are coming here together and I have an intention to know you. So I'll be present with you. I'll make sure that everything else turned off in my life for this, 30 minutes. Sometimes a photo shoot in a corporate environment can be like 15 minutes, and my task is to see and open up a person and make him or her relaxed in a span of 10, 15 minutes.
Wow.
So the first thing for me is to not have anything on my mind, not have my ego playing in this. So I have to be completely removed from anything related to my life and completely invested into what this person is about. Coming into the space with this innate sense of curiosity, similarly how, kids coming to a playground. Oh, I wonder what this person is about. Also approaching every human being as a gift to you, because I don't know how my conversation is going to end up. I don't know, maybe we'll become best friends. Maybe I'm going to help you with something. Maybe you're going to help me with something. Maybe we're just going to have fun. But regardless, I know that there is purpose in us meeting at this moment. So it's kind of, it's definitely not a transactional moment in life. You look at this as a investment into your future. Every single interaction, every single, moment that you're together. And then in terms of questions, I love asking people about feelings, because what I'm essentially looking for is the opportunity to relate. How can I relate to this human being? I see them for the first time. I don't work in their company. I have no idea what their company, usually I know what the company does, but I have no idea what your day-to-day operations. And I don't want to grade you based on your work environment, because I know you're not your job. You're not your work. You're not your title, right? So how can I relate to another human being? And then, that's up to you. You can ask how your morning was this morning and how did you feel? If, for instance, some people, like I got stuck in traffic, or like I had this fight with my wife, like, or like I had this and this, and ask about feelings. That's the greatest chance of you relating to another human being, because you all have that. You all have, don't tell me you don't feel anything. Even if you say that I don't feel anything, that means that I can still have an opportunity to relate with you. But everything else, and you'll be surprised how people react when you ask them deeper questions as to, and I wonder how that made you feel. And
I think that's so important, especially with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because a lot of times I might not be able to relate to exactly what you're saying, but I understand what being sad feels like, or I understand what being left out feels like, or feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed. Like, it's so important to learn those words, and it's key. Like, the communication is key to being able to relate. And I think you have a real gift in being able to see that through the lens, literal lens of a camera is interesting, of being able to pick up those feelings. It's like those things in the hospital when we were like, right now in the airport, they have the thing where you press the button, like, how was your visit to the toilet today? Yeah. Smiley face, sad face, or neutral. And I'm always like, when is it ever smiley face? I'm always wondering, when is it smiley face? You go to a therapist and it's like 5 pages. And you're like, I'm between worrisome, a little nervous. Like, there's all of these different things, but it's like, so when you start thinking about it, there's so many words to describe how you're feeling. But once you can find that word, other people can relate to it.
Yeah, absolutely. During pandemic, I shot a personal project. It's called All Is One. I basically invited into the studio space several people who did not know each other, and I worked with them one-on-one. And I basically asked them the same question. How was your pandemic experience? Or how is your pandemic experience? Because I could not understand what we're going through collectively. So I was trying to kind of ask other people and see how I feel about their answers, and whether or not we're going through the same thing. And then I think I had like about 10, 15 participants. And in the end, and I was recording audio as well to create the soundtracks of their answers. And I realized that we're all worrying about the same things. There isn't much difference between us. And I thought, wow, that is so interesting and fascinating, that as much as separation exists in our world, unfortunately, as much as there's this division in society, right? There is still a chance for us to have that common thread. And sometimes it's a matter of initiating a conversation about it. It's similarly what you're doing with your podcast as well, having that space, inviting people into this conversation and saying, hey, we have a chance. We have hope. We have, people who want to have those conversations. So why don't we start that? And I think the more companies can initiate those conversations, the better it is for all. And that's honestly my desire to partner with forward-thinking HR and professionals and the heads of teams who want to create those experiences and conversations for people to come in and say, yes, you can relate to me and I can relate to you. And we don't need to divide ourselves into different groups and hang the labels on each other, So I think that's a beautiful thing about current situation, what we're doing.
Yeah, I like the way that you're thinking about this, that, I think for all of us, there's this, shared humanity, even if, we have many different experiences, all of these different things. And I think in the corporate setting, in the organizational setting, it is always challenging, because it is, and I just had this conversation last week with a team. What does authentic mean to you? when when you're being authentic, how authentic do you want people to really be? How authentic is okay at work? And so I think there's also this piece of, we have these shared experiences and we want folks to be comfortable. And then also acknowledging that the experiences aren't the same and the experiences aren't always positive for every single person. And so I think it is that balance that you have to strike as an HR person, but starting from that place of what do we have in common and what are the things that tie us together, working in the same place, shared mission, all those things. But also, like, again, just getting people comfortable with who are they. So I think that's also another piece to the puzzle. And, I, of course, with life coaching, I know that that's, definitely something you're working with your folks on is who are they, or who do they want to be? Yeah. And so I think that's just a fascinating piece too, because I think with photography, it's the, who do you see yourself as, but also who do you want to see yourself as? Yeah. And so I think that it's just such an interesting piece, and to think about that in a corporate setting and how HR folks can help with some of these things. I think that it's such an interesting concept. So I love it.
Yeah, I oftentimes have these conversations with several friends of mine who hold high level corporate positions in their companies, about how do we bring mindset coaching and life coaching into the corporate environment, because as much as, of course, it's important to talk about career and progress of your work trajectory, your work path, and all kinds of skill sets that are important. But then the more work and life are becoming integrated, the more there is a need of understanding exactly who am I as a person, because that's going to affect everything. You no longer can, just answer the question, what's my job description, and be satisfied with that. That's not enough. That's not enough. I mean, if you're managing a group of people, and yes, you're a great manager, no doubt in that. But then what about interaction? What about communication? What about your happiness, your inner happiness, your self-image and self-worth? And so the question of self-worth comes into place where you have your self-image and the idea of your ideal self. So if your ideal self is not matching your self-image, what you see about yourself right now, then your self-worth goes down, essentially. So there is that disconnect. How do we bring those two together? Because that's going to influence your day-to-day happiness with yourself. How do I show up? That will trigger a lot of fears, a lot of inauthentic behaviors, trying to be better, be somebody else, be not yourself, anyone else, but not myself, because I'm so ashamed of how I am, because my self-image does not match my ideal self. So there are all these questions that I personally foresee a lot of HR professionals thinking of or considering addressing in the near future.
Right now, so many of us are getting ready for performance reviews. And I was laughing because I was sharing a new presentation that I'm working on. And part of it, I was stating that part of the issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion success, program success, is that we are all fiercely protective of our own self-esteem. And so we started laughing about performance reviews. I go, isn't it funny that when I write the review, I can say, this is your challenge. These are the things that you haven't done. But I don't think I would ever write, caveat, I didn't give you fully all the information that you needed for this.
Yeah.
I just expected you to figure it out and you didn't, and now I'm mad. There's so many things that when you write it, it's like, how aware are you? I think it's a very, we're trying to get better at it. I think a lot of people are trying to get better at it, but I think that is always the tricky part, right? Is because of trying to manage your own ego and self-esteem from a leadership standpoint, and you're trying to be your own advocate that you can lose yourself sometimes in that and be like, we're trying to get really, really clear. And I think of the example, I put out a diversity report, but it was around like 2.5 quarters in, and my boss is like, why aren't you doing this thing? And I was like, oh, because when you say it, you give me the option to opt out. They're like, I am. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you realize that, but yeah, you always are like, this is what I think you should do. And I'm like, well, I don't. And that's the end of it. I was like, is it something you really want me to do? You're going to have to say that, because my brain, there's too much going on in my brain. I don't guess anymore. Right. And I think it's interesting that we get to this place where we expect people to figure out what I'm thinking, and punish people for not knowing us, even though you're not giving them your whole self at work. I think we're trying to.
Yeah.
But now I'm like all thinking about it. It's like, this is really a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be. Like when you think about how you see yourself, how others see you, and how does that relate at work? Dasha, that's scary. It's like, I don't know, like you can get people to do that in 15 minutes and they're like, okay, this is me. Then you have a real skill.
Well, I think I have to trust myself, so much so to the point that as long as I know that I am in the right state of mind and an energy place.
Well, where's that class?
Well, I have I have my own routine, right, established to prepare myself for this work, because it's not it's not just simply pressing the button of camera, right? It's a little more than that. But it takes practice of relaxing into who you are in the moment and trusting that when we're having this conversation, I'm showing up fully. And yes, I hope that you show up fully as well as yourself, but I can't expect, I have no expectations, and I think that's what is challenging, because it's the bigger question is how can we be in the unknown? How can we be with a person without knowing whether or not they're giving us the full picture? We don't know. I don't know. We're having conversation. Hopefully this person is trusting me enough to tell me everything they think about my work performance or the whole situation at work, but I have no control over it. And I think having no control, that's like a bigger philosophical question that we might need another episode.
Yeah.
Having no control over certain things, right? They trigger a lot of fear in us, and that creates the whole confusion and miscommunication a lot of times. I think what we need to learn more and get more comfortable with is that uncertainty of I don't know, but my job is to show up and be myself. I can be only responsible for me. I can only have expectations from myself. I can only take ownership for the way I show up, and hoping and trusting that that person feels the same. But then, and the outcome is the outcome.
Yeah,
I know it sounds easier said than done.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't come up with a better way of dealing with this, to be honest.
But as Jackye just said, what a skill that is, because I think that's the piece too, is being able to pull that out of someone and make them comfortable enough to truly show you who they are. I think that's just that's a gift. And I think that's another piece to this, as you think about how people show up at work and, that mask, as you mentioned earlier, that folks wear, how much of that do they take off in front of the camera or don't, depending on how comfortable they feel with you or whoever is taking the pictures. And so I think that's a piece too, is just the gift that you have to be able to get folks to pull that mask off and show who they really are. And as you said, in 15 minutes, that's amazing. So, just really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm blessed to be doing what I truly love and believe in. And, seeing people and making them feel seen has been the greatest joy. Because
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I think many of us don't realize that it's a fundamental human need. This is how we bring each other into existence.
Mhm.
This is why we need another person in the room. This is why when we're growing up, right, we need another person to say, I see you, and you as a child understand, oh, I exist because someone sees me, you know? And so it's the same thing is in any social environment. The way for me to know that I matter is not only by me recognizing my being, that's great, but we're social creatures. So we're meant to be in the community. So if imagine I get into a community where no one sees me, no one recognizes my existence, how do I feel about myself?
Mhm.
How that's terrifying, you know? So actually, me knowing that my job is making other people feel seen, whether or not I belong to this community or not.
Mhm.
Well, I help this community to create this culture, this atmosphere, this energy. That's the most beautiful job ever. And I'm just truly blessed and excited to keep on doing it.
Yeah, I think that what you said really resonates with me about being seen is part of that. I was explaining, where I work, we're completely remote. So when you get an opportunity to see each other, a lot of times it's the first time, and I've worked with them for over a year and I've never met them in person. And someone came up to me, they were after presenting the topic that I was talking about. They were like, oh, you're so open and you're like such an extrovert and you do all these things. And I was like, actually, I'm neither an extrovert or introvert. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, introverts get their energy from being by themselves, right? And extroverts get their energy from being with other people. And I was like, I get my energy from being on stage. And then I want to run and hide. I need to recharge by myself or my special friends. And then I have to go out and then like chase that attention. And then once I get it, run. It's like a cat. Speaking of cats, it's like that. It's like, do you see me? Oh, you see me. And then they run away.
Yeah, I can relate.
And I feel like, I know I'm not the only person who does that, where it's like, they want to be seen, they want to be heard. And then I get afraid once they're seen and heard. What's next? Because we're so used to people not being open to seeing and hearing all of us for who we are.
And I think that's part of the picture taking as well. It is the being seen and heard, and how vulnerable that would make a person feel if they have never been vulnerable before. Like to Jackie's point, if this is the first time I'm getting my picture taken by you, and you have pulled out that, who I truly am, and that puts me in a very vulnerable position, especially, in a work environment or wherever, really for whomever it might be. And like how you have to walk folks through that. Like, I think that's just such a critical piece. Like,
the average person experiences up to 10,000 marketing efforts each day. Those ideas are culled from millions of possibilities. The CMO Confidential podcast takes you behind the scenes to learn about the decisions, drama, politics, and glory that go with one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite, the Chief Marketing Officer. Guests from all over the business world join Mike Linton, a 5-time CMO, to share stories about what it's really like in the marketing universe.
It is. You're absolutely right. It's a very vulnerable place. I think the idea is so picture taking. Let me go to square one here. Photography is for me the business of love for people. It's a business of loving, essentially. It's the work of loving. It's seeing. There's a great book. I don't remember the author, where it says that seeing is believing, and believing, the root of the word believing comes from loving. So it's, when you think about it, when I approach photography process, I come to the photo shoot with an intention of loving this person in front of me. There is nothing else but the recognition of your true beauty, whatever is given to you. I come with a set of fresh eyes. I know nothing about you. The only thing that I know is that you're a gift given to me right now in this moment. And how my job is like, how do I get to know more of what kind of gift are you, you know? So if I can explain that to you during the process, that's great. If I can take it even further and explain to you that this image becomes a record of you being seen and loved for who you are, then you take this image and you keep it forever. And every time you feel like you're afraid of being yourself, you're afraid of showing up, you're feeling vulnerable, hopefully you can come back to that image and see, oh, someone in that moment, someone saw me. And they didn't criticize me, they didn't judge me, they didn't tell me that I'm right or wrong, because there is no such thing. I was there and it was safe and I felt great about it. And the energy was amazing. And because, you know, we remember how people made us feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I only want this image to carry that energy. And hopefully it's gonna last, because any artwork carries the energy. We know that from paintings, from music, from photography, from movies, right? So why don't we have a picture of ourselves that carry the energy of us being recognized and valued and loved for who we are? I think, you know, will that in the future make you feel vulnerable coming to work, knowing that you've been, hopefully we get to present this whole process in a way that you understand that this is us loving you,
Mm-hmm.
not us making you feel vulnerable or punishing you for whatever, right? So
Right. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, to be clear, yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way, like vulnerable, meaning like to open up and kind of show yourself in such a way, it does put you in a vulnerable spot. And yes, I mean, hopefully any group that is doing this, and you know, I assume this is part of your process, it is creating a space where everyone can be in that vulnerable spot. So it's not, oh, hey, Jackye, you're going to be vulnerable, everyone else isn't. Like it's the shared,
Just you.
you know, shared experience, which is awesome. So very cool. So Dasha, you know, one of the questions we ask folks is, you know, what are the things you want to make sure our listeners hear from you, you know, from this episode?
Mm-hmm. I think if there was just one thing, I would like to highlight and underline and just remind people that in any given interaction, there is a way for you to be in the same space with other people that can make them feel seen. And you, by just being aware of that, can change somebody's life. Because we don't know, you know, some people might never been seen, especially maybe sometimes you meet a younger generation of kids who are just starting their career and who knows what kind of experiences they had in life. But you, by just being around them in a way that makes them feel seen, can change the entire trajectory of their life. And I think the more aware we become of that, the more responsible we become, the better it is for all of us, and especially for those people who need that. You know, we all need that, but some people maybe more than others. And there is nothing crazy and extra curriculum for you to do other than just being present with that person and being a little more curious than just, you know, hi and bye. So I would like to encourage more intentionality, I guess, in our interactions.
Love that. Jackye?
This hit me different this time. I feel like I want people to make sure they take the time to look at your Instagram to see the outcome of some of these, of your photography and portraits. Especially if there's any confusion to what we're talking about, I think it becomes just really increasingly clear of the type of work that you have. And if you haven't up to this point, go back and listen to this again after you watch it to understand, and also encourage people to think about kind of where we were at the beginning of why don't you want people to see either you do want to see people, or what are you sharing, how you feel about how much you share of yourself and where you are, if you feel safe enough to share yourself. And if not, why? To start looking at those things, especially those of us, those women of a certain age, or, I'm about to be 50 and I'm right at that point where I'm like, do I dye my hair? Do I not dye my hair? Is this skirt too short? Is it like not? Does it make me look matronly? Like, I'm going through all of the things right now. I'm sure I'll get over it. But it's like, I want people to do that and understand and think about that. I think it's a really important question.
Yeah, I love that.
I think the piece for me is, what you've started with at the beginning, that, folks might come to you and start with can you make my nose look smaller? Can you, whatever it might be that they want you to change about them. But part of finding who they are and finding their beauty, whatever you define beauty as, is not changing those things. And, each of us is an individual, and each of us has so many amazing things about us and how we show up and what we say with our eyes, all of these different things. And so if you can do that in a portrait, like, how amazing is that? Like, that's just very, very cool. So, Dasha, thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate it. Where can folks find you? As Jackye mentioned, you're on Instagram. So tell us a little bit about where we can find you.
Yeah, I am very easy to find. Actually, I'm Dasha Dare across all platforms. My website is dashadare.com. I'm Dasha Dare, one word, on Instagram. Dasha Dare on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there, and I'd say Instagram is more for picture sharing purposes. You can see all of my most recent portfolio of work, and then LinkedIn is more about my work with corporate clients, more about feeling seen, and some of the self-image projects that I'm currently working on. So. Yeah, and my email, dasha@dashadare.com. So please feel free to reach out, hang out, spend time, take pictures. I'm all for it.
Come to New York to get pictures. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Well, Dasha, thank you so much for joining us. This is Katee Van Horn.
And this is Jackye Clayton.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We out.